Well, hello, everyone. Thanks very much for coming today. My name is Paul Cassan. I'm the Integrity Commissioner for West Nipissing and am really happy to work with this municipality. I've been asked by staff and council to come and present with respect to providing information for people who are thinking about running for council. And I see a bunch of familiar faces around. And people that I haven't met yet. So certainly the folks that are here for the first time who are thinking about running, thank you very much. We really need people to put their name forward for this rewarding but sometimes thankless task. As we go through the presentation today, if you have any questions, I'd like to try to answer them. We do have a fair bit to cover. So I want to try to keep it sort of on point. But I would also like to answer your questions as we're going through. So Mel, if we can start. So I'm here from Wishart Law Firm. I'm the senior partner there now because I'm sort of the last guy standing. We're about 30 lawyers and staff that work with municipalities throughout the province, mostly in Northern Ontario. But I've been doing municipal law for 28 years. And really, I didn't go to school for that, but as soon as I got into it, I just found I really loved it. I find municipal government is the most important level of government. And the reason for that is that people who run for municipal government are face to face with their constituents every day. Whereas, the prime minister, you might email him, but in the municipal level, you're going to be face to face with people that you're trying to help every day. And so in that regard, I find it's the most important level of government and certainly an area I love working in. Next slide, please. So here we go. 2026 municipal election is in November. The period for
October 26th.
October 26th. Very well. Thank you, Your Worship. The nomination period is open now. And so if you're interested in running, you can go and see Melanie, and she'll have a elector's package for you if you want to run. It's important.
Also on the website.
And it's on the website. Thank you. And it's important to get that application in before you start campaigning. There are rules about finances for campaigning for the municipal election. So if you have questions about the details on that, I'll refer you to the clerk or the deputy clerk, who I understand went to do some training today for the first election she's going to be part of. So if we can move on. The experienced councillors around the table will know what the secret that I believe is to effective municipal governance, but we're going to get to that at the end. And I want you to sort of think about what that might be as we're going through this. If we can move on. So it's important to understand what governance is. Because if you're running for council, you're not running to operate the municipality on a hands-on basis. You're running to be a member of a governance board that makes decisions that set law for the municipality. Your role as a member of council is one of the entire team. You have one vote, and your power really is around the council table. That's where the municipal council's effectiveness really happens. So governance is a system of making decisions in council that become the law of the municipality. A municipal government is a statutory level of government. And what that means is that for anything that municipal council wants to do, there has to be a statutory authority for them to make that decision. Our ability to make decisions is governed by the Municipal Act, by the Assessment Act, and all sorts of pieces of legislation. And if you're on council, you'll get advice from staff at every council meeting about what the legal authority is for the decision that you're thinking about making. So for municipal council, governance is also a political process around the table, and the design of the system is different than the federal and the provincial levels of government because we don't have parties. We don't have an opposition and a party that's in power. We have a team around the table who discusses and votes on an issue. And then that becomes the decision of council that all members of council are responsible to further and put forward. And that becomes the decision of council. So it doesn't matter really as much about what you wanted to do before the decision was made. Once the decision is made, then you're responsible to help that decision out and make it go forward. So when you're on council, you'll find that you get a lot of questions from your ratepayers because you're so accessible about all sorts of things. But as I'd indicated, the jurisdiction of council is given by the Municipal Act largely, and then a bunch of other legislation that applies. And so one of the things that council is most responsible for is the services that the municipality will provide. And those services are things like a fire department, library, road surfacing and maintenance, water, those sorts of things. And so council has the jurisdiction under the Municipal Act to make decisions about those services. So deciding on what services are provided and what the level of service is provided is really one of the primary roles of council. I think we can move on. I think I covered that now. It is really important to understand that council doesn't operate the municipality. So if you're on council, you don't touch the tools. You don't pick up a shovel. You don't get in the grader. More on that later. If you push, I think there's a bunch more bullets that come. Nope, there's not. So I thought I'd approach this from a different perspective than what you do on council and talk about 10 reasons why you would not run for council. Because there are quite a number of people that run for council thinking they're going to do one of these 10 things. And I'm going to explain how it works in real life. So next slide, please, Mel. So I do unfortunately hear that people want to run for council because they want to fire somebody. They want to fire the CAO. They want to fire the fire chief. They want to fire a public works person. It's important to understand that, in fact, municipal council has actually only one employee. There's one employee that reports to the municipal council, and that's the CAO. The CAO is responsible then for all of the staffing in the municipality. CAO is kind of the point person between council and municipal staff. And so it's actually the CAO who is responsible for staff performance, not council. Council is responsible for the performance of the CAO and is required to guide the CAO and evaluate the CAO's performance. We often hear that people want to run for council to fire the public works superintendent because nobody knows what staff does. You know, they see people, particularly public works, because public works are very open, obvious to the municipality. And so you'll see lots of complaints about people in public works standing around or at the coffee shop or taking breaks and things like that. What you need to remember is that in many municipalities, public works is actually a unionized position. And they have a collective agreement that provides them with opportunities for breaks and things like that. And so even if council wanted to say no more breaks for public works, the union would have something to say about that. So Let's move on. Staff are so important when it comes to the operation of municipality because they do operate the tools. And if you want to operate the tools, if you want to drive the grader, if you want to drive the fire truck, then apply to be staff because you'll be a lot happier in that role than you will be as a councillor who wants to then drive the grader. Staff actually have a statutory role in the municipality to advise council. And so their role is to research, to prepare reports, to answer questions from members of council so that council can make a good and informed decision. So the staff, particularly the high level staff, but really all staff, have a role to advise municipal council when they're making decisions. Council does not manage the implementation of their decisions. So if they make a decision that says we're going to have a recycling program, council doesn't then hand out blue boxes and go door to door to see that they're getting picked up. Council manages by asking the CAO to get a report about how the recycling system is working. Okay, let's move on.
Anyway, I don't have a little pencil.
Is that the end?
I've done something. It's something that I shouldn't have. About that. I'll be a minute.
That's good. We're good.
Yeah, it changed. Okay.
So there are very defined roles between council and staff. I've been talking about council being the governance authority and staff's role being to implement the decisions of council, really. So council sets the policies, council sets the levels of service. Staff don't do that. So staff don't get to say, we're going to have a recycling system or we're going to have a fire department. That's council's decision. And then council tells the CAO, okay, we need a fire department. And the CAO says, okay, here's a fire department bylaw, which we have here. So staff reports to and advises council so that council can make informed decisions. Staff have massive statutory tasks to perform. I think the clerk in a municipality is mentioned, and Mal, you might know this, but I think it's over 200 pieces of legislation that have a responsibility for the clerk, like the Cemeteries Act, the Elections Act, Municipal Act, the Assessment Act, all sorts of things. And so I actually think, with respect, that clerk is the wrong title for this position because it sounds kind of like a grocery clerk, but they run the municipality with respect to the record keeping and reporting. And the clerk is a very, very important role in the municipality. And it's really important when you're on council to know that although you're asking staff to do things at council meetings, they have a whole bunch of things that they're also doing to satisfy the provincial and to some extent the federal government as they're doing their day-to-day tasks. So they're not simply secretaries waiting for direction from council. They do take direction from council, but they've got a lot to do on their plate before council starts meddling with it, right? No. Next slide, please. So council actually, you'll hear if you watch a council meeting that council directs staff to do something. And it's important to understand that council as a whole at the council table directs staff to do something. An individual councillor, once we leave the council chambers, doesn't direct staff. And so I've had lots of situations over the years where a member of council goes to often a construction site. It's often public works that this happens with, and tells the workers what they want to see done. And the workers should say, well, hold on, let's talk to the supervisor who will talk to the director of public works, who will talk to the CAO and say, did council tell us to do this or not? And so individual councilors outside of a council meeting don't personally direct staff. It's council at the table that directs staff. You've heard me say twice before that council members don't personally operate municipal equipment or perform municipal work. If you're a member of council and you find yourself touching any of the tools, which means the grader and the shovel, but it also means the computer. If you're actually doing things on behalf of the municipality, you're outside of your role as a member of council. One of the reasons that's so important to understand is that there is some excellent statutory protection from personal liability for members of council, also for members of staff. It's section 448 of the Municipal Act. And what it says is that somebody's not even allowed to start an action against you. So they can't start a lawsuit against you if you're acting within your role and in good faith. And so that's why it's so important to understand your role, because if you're acting within your role, then you're protected. If you're acting outside of your role, you lose the protection from the Municipal Act. You also lose the protection of the municipal insurers, and you're putting your own assets at risk. I do want to scare you a little bit about that because I want you to be really alive to the issue of whether or not what you're trying to do is within your role, because that's really important to understand. Because that's how people get in trouble, and when they're doing it right, it's how they stay out of trouble. I acted for 2 mayors of Elliott Lake who were sued personally in the class action suit. You might have heard it just got settled, where the mall collapsed. And I was able to have the action against them personally dismissed within 2 weeks, because the allegations in the class action were not that the mayors were acting outside of their role. The allegations were that they were acting as mayor at the time, and that the municipality didn't take enough steps to protect people from the mall collapse. And so because of that, I was able to use section 448 and have the actions dismissed against them right off the bat. So that's just an example from real life about how that protection works and why you would not want to be outside of that. If you were a mayor, if you were those mayors as an example, and you were walking around doing inspections and telling the building inspector there's concrete falling from the roof or there's leaks, you better do something about it. You're now outside your role, and they may well have been involved in the action because they would have been acting outside of their role as mayor. I'll say this again a number of times, and if you have any questions about it, I want you to ask, because I don't want you to mix the roles. Okay, let's move on now. I think we've covered the first bullet. Okay, we'll move on. So I do find that municipal government is kind of like operating in a fishbowl, we call it. The reason for that is statutorily we have to have open meetings that are open and available to the public. Often they're now broadcast on the internet. And the reality is that when members of council are out in the community, people approach them at the grocery store, they call their house, they go to their house, they're very open. Staff similarly often live in the community. In the springtime, there are always potholes, and staff are gonna hear about that. It's really important for members of council to support staff as they're doing their work. And I don't mean out at the grocery store saying leave staff alone. I mean in council, it's important to have reports discussed at the table so that ratepayers understand what's going on, so that they understand the public works budget constraints and processes, that they understand what's going on with the library on a annual basis. They understand what's going on with the new fire hall and things like that. It's improper and it is against the code of conduct for councillors to be criticizing staff. Personally, you know, I'm happy to say we don't see it here, but I have seen it in other municipalities where there's real acrimony between a member of council usually and staff. And the member of council spends time in council meetings attacking staff at a council meeting. Back to our roles. It's not your role as a member of council to criticize an individual staff member. If you have a problem with staff performance, you take that up with the CAO and the CAO deals with it. I have a situation that I want to be careful telling you about, where members of council were extremely critical of members of staff, fairly senior members of staff. And what ended up happening is the senior staff person said, "Hey, you're attacking me so much, I've been constructively dismissed." And those members of council are at risk of a lawsuit personally, because that's not the role of a member of council. And so in a situation, if that happens, because the staff person is suing the municipality could claim over against the councillors to say it's not the municipality, it's not the ratepayers that should be paying for this wrongful dismissal suit. It's actually the offending councillors. It's appropriate for you as a member of council to ask questions about a report at a council meeting. It is appropriate, and I don't want you to think that I'm trying to get you not to ask questions about the information that you're considering. That's critical. You need to understand it. But if you have a problem with a member of staff, take that up with the CAO. And if you see problems with a staff report, because you get them before the council meeting, if you're reviewing the council package and you see a problem with a report, it's good to go to the CAO and say, "Hey, something's missing." And the example that I'll give you is, I had a member of council who was an engineer, and not long after the Elliott Lake Mall collapse, the Professional Engineers of Ontario put some standards in place about building inspections. They didn't have standards before that. So the engineer counselor was looking at an engineering report about a building in the municipality and saw that a portion of the standard wasn't covered in the report. And so went to the CAO and said, they're missing what should be section 3 of the report. And so then what the mayor and the clerk did is they took it off the agenda and deferred it so that they could get advice about the thing that was missed. So that's how dealing with deficiencies in a report is done effectively, because then what happened is the CAO went back to the third-party engineer, got the report updated. The engineer had actually done the step, but it wasn't listed in the report. So they fixed the report to include that information, and everything went ahead fine. You will see that if things get heated or emotional in council, the head of council is responsible to maintain decorum in a meeting, but also all members of council are responsible to say, hey, things are getting offside, and they can call it a point of order or a point of privilege and try to get things back on the rails. Next slide, please. So I truly believe this: when council looks good, so does the municipality. And when council looks bad, it reflects badly on the staff. So council needs to make sure that they are making important decisions carefully and fully informed. And they should raise issues with senior staff if there are problems with the report or they have questions with the report in advance of the council meeting. And you do that with the CAO. So if you're reading a report and you see that there's a problem with the report or you've got a question about it, you take the CAO, you go and meet with the senior staff person and you talk about the report. A really good example of this I saw when I was in a municipality working with the treasurer. And what had happened is there was a new or a reassessment by MPAC of recreational waterfront properties that caused the assessed value of those properties throughout the province to increase by about 20%. And a lot of taxpayers were really upset by that because it hit them in the tax bill. So taxpayers are calling the municipality saying, why in the heck is my tax bill so high? And so this member of council came into the treasurer's office and said, hey, look, I'm going to ask you a question at the council meeting. I don't want you to give me the answer right now. But I've had a lot of ratepayers come to me and say, my taxes have gone up 20%, and I want to know what council's doing, why this happened. So if the member of council had asked the treasurer that question in a council meeting, the answer that the treasurer would have given most likely is, that's set by MPAC. We don't have anything to do with it. We can't do anything about it, which legally is the correct answer. It's just not very useful. Because the member of council had gone to the treasurer's office in advance of the council meeting, when it was this councillor's turn to ask the question of the treasurer about this issue, he asked the question and the treasurer said, well, I'm glad that you raised this issue. I have Jason Cormier from MPAC here to do a presentation to council about the assessment. The issue is set by MPAC, but if anybody thinks that their assessment is too high, they can appeal their assessment before the end of April in each year under Section 40 of the Assessment Act. And I've got the forms here, or you can go online. Provided really useful information for the ratepayers around the room and a lot better answer to the treasurer than that's not our responsibility. It's not their responsibility. But because of the communication and leadership that happened, they were able to give the ratepayers a lot better and more useful information about what happened to cause the tax increase and what to do about it if they thought that their values were wrong. And so that's why I say it's really important as a member of council, when an issue like this comes to you, to raise the issue with the senior staff beforehand, because if staff are prepared, they can give you a good report and everybody sounds an awful lot better than raising the issue at the council meeting where staff haven't had time to do research and you're going to get the answer, it's not our responsibility, which is correct, but not as useful. Let's move on. It is important for staff to speak to their reports, because when they present reports, there will be questions from council. And so it's good to have the people who authored the report at the council meeting. These are some best practices and not necessarily related. So that's one issue. The next issue is to, what I call, get the motions right the first time. When council makes a decision or council directs staff to do something, they pass a motion that becomes a resolution that becomes the law. And so if council wants a report from the clerk about the municipal election, it's important to think carefully about what the wording of the motion should be so that you get the information you're looking for. And so in that respect, it's great for you to meet with the CAO and meet with the senior staff person and actually work out what the resolution might be. And also, it's really important to understand what a reasonable return date is. It's good in your motion to say, I want this report from the clerk for the meeting the second meeting in June, so that the clerk knows, okay, that's when the product, the deliverable is expected. And if you talk to the clerk as an example before the meeting, when you're drafting the motion, then you'll find out what the competing tasks are that they're working on. And so you end up with a more efficient process than doing it at the council table. I had a situation where a municipality called me, the mayor called and said, staff, we heard you, Paul, and we gave clear direction to staff, and staff are still not doing what we're asking them to do. And so he said, I need you to come down to council. We need to talk about what we're going to do. We're going to have closed session. We're going to have you clerk the meeting because we don't want staff in the meeting. We've got a whole list of resolutions, directions that staff have been given that they haven't done. So it was a nice July day. I jumped on my motorcycle, drove a couple hours out of the Sioux, went to the municipality, and they sure enough had a list of motions that they wanted to talk about. So the first one makes the point. They said, look, here's a motion, and it says that staff are directed to post the park as a no snowmobiling zone. And it was passed in March, and the signs still aren't up. And so we're really upset about that. Remember, I said it was a nice day in July? So it didn't say when they were to post the park. And when I talked to staff about it, staff said, well, why would we post it in the beginning, in the end of the spring, the beginning of the summer? There's very little snowmobiling in the park in the summer. And so our intention was to post it when the snow flies so that the signs aren't stolen or vandalized by the time it happens. All of this point to show that the communication between council and staff is so important. And it's important to lay out your expectations. So if council really wanted it posted within 2 weeks of the council meeting, that's what the motion should have said. Because council was reasonable in saying it didn't get done. Their communication failed because they didn't say when they thought it should be done. And staff was also reasonable in saying, well, we're not going to do it before there's a risk of snowmobiling in the park. Okay, third bullet, unrelated, is that it's important to understand. It might be easier in this municipality than some of the smaller ones, but it is important to understand when we're around the council table that we are setting law and we are operating this statutory level of government. And so as much as I don't like formality, I do say that it's important for the mayor to be addressed as mayor or your worship, and for councillors to be addressed as Councillor Fred or Councillor Pellerin. The reason for that is it's somewhat uncomfortable and it puts distance between us, and it highlights the fact that they're sitting in an elected role and they're not running a business, hanging around with a bunch of friends. They're doing something outside of the normal day-to-day life, and it engenders a level of respect. And it also, when you hear it and you're sitting at the table, it helps to remember that you're acting as a member of council. So I do really encourage councils to be formal with respect to the process at a council meeting and to address each other by their elected titles. Next slide, please. Okay, so that was number 10 for why you don't run for council. Number 9 for why you don't run for council is because you want to fix a specific issue. If you want to run to fix a specific issue, you're going to find this a bit of a frustrating task, because the role of council is extremely broad. And there are a lot more issues for council to deal with than simply potholes. So there may be an issue that's attracting you to run for council, but it's important to understand that you're also going to be dealing with budgets and fire departments and libraries and dog licenses and chickens and all sorts of things like that. So it's a lot broader than a single issue. Also, and we'll touch this again, your role as a member of council is actually not to handle complaints. And a lot of members of council and a lot of ratepayers are surprised by that. But councillors are not the complaints process. And when councillors get a complaint, their responsibility is to send that information to the staff person who can do something about it, because the member of council can't. Next slide, please. So council is responsible to work toward a smooth running municipality, and you do that by reading your council package in advance, being informed of what the issues are that you're going to debate. Make sure that you're legally compliant. I told you that we're a statutory level of government, and one of the things that keeps it exciting is that the provincial government keeps changing the laws that apply to us and the requirements that apply to us. It's kind of a make work project, I think. And what we need in order to do that is high performing staff and visionary effective leaders. What I mean by visionary is the role of council really is to think about what they want the municipality to look like in the next 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, and figure out what they're going to do today to get there. If council is focused on the past or on saving pennies, they often miss the opportunity to be visionary and to put things in place that are, frankly, a lot bigger projects than do we buy paper clips from Staples or Canadian Tire, and where can we get them cheaper? That's for staff to do. You set the budget as the council, and then staff implements the budget. Next slide, please, Mel. We've talked about the roles. It's spring time because the leaves are out, but this is something that the hockey fans can understand. You know, if you're in a playoff game and the goalie all of a sudden comes out of the net and goes on a breakaway, you were not expecting that, and you're probably not ready to protect the net. That's what happens if a member of council goes off and does a bunch of stuff that staff are supposed to be doing, or vice versa. Staff decide they're going to set a bunch of policies and enter into agreements that would bind council. So it is really important to make sure that you know what your role is and that you're playing within your role. Because if you don't, then your own personal assets and the municipal ones are at risk. Next slide, please. It is really interdependent to be on council. You depend on staff. So councillors make the policy. They make the decisions. They're accountable to the ratepayers, and they make policies. They depend on staff to give them good information, and they depend on the other councillors to have read their package and to ask intelligent questions. The reason we have councils instead of just a single person running a municipality is that statistically it's shown if there are multiple people considering and making decisions on a particular issue, the group makes a better decision than a single person every time. And so the point is not to agree initially. The point is to be informed, to come forward with your viewpoints, and then for the group to make a decision. Next slide, please. So also important to understand that council is part of the municipal operation team. So council makes the decisions that become law. And there are a number of organizations that help them. We've talked about staff providing advice. There's also local boards like your library board, your police service board, the Homes for the Aged board, and all of those boards run their own statutory project, and they report back to council, and they often get funded in large part by municipal funds. There are also committees that you hear about. Committees are advisory to council. So committees happen often when there is an individual project or there's a sort of a standard issue that council wants advice and reporting on. And committees are frequently run by appointed members of council and people from the public. And their role is to do a lot more in-depth research and provide advice to council about a particular issue. And then, of course, the ratepayers are the most important, because that's why we're here working for the best interest of the ratepayers. So those are the components of the team that have to work together for the municipality to function properly. Next slide, please. I think I've covered all that, so we'll skip it. So next reason not to run for council is because you have expertise that you want to share with council or staff or ratepayers. I'm a lawyer. If I were sitting on council, I would not be giving council legal advice, because that's not my role. And if I were sitting as a member of council and giving legal advice, I'm stepping outside of the role and putting my house on hold. We talked about the engineer counselor who was aware of an issue and went to improve the report. And that's what you do with your personal and professional knowledge. So you don't actually advise council, but you bring your background knowledge to the table so that when there's a debate, you understand what the report is saying to you and you know what questions to ask. And you can see when there are holes in a report and you can do something about getting that fixed up. So it is important for you to have to bring your experience to the table, but you're not the municipality's lawyer just because you're a lawyer and sitting on council, if that's clear. Okay, next slide, please. I think I've covered most of that. Let's move on. So municipal affairs is kind of the provincial body that oversees municipal operations. And they say that councillors are elected to represent the ratepayers' views when dealing with issues that come before council. And that's important, because you as a councillor may have different views than your ratepayers. But if ratepayers are telling you that there's a particular issue they're interested in, then your role is to advocate for your ratepayers. And so you may say things as a representative of ratepayers that are not your own personal interests. You particularly see this in situations where religion and government conflict. And I've had a number of situations in court recently where councillors have taken positions, the ones that I was able to defend successfully, said, you know, the issue that we're talking about at council table is against my religious upbringing, but I'm going to support it, notwithstanding that. And so it's an example of where your own personal interests may conflict with your role as a member of council. Being a member of council is not easy. And I had a wise mayor say to me that oftentimes when you're sitting around the council table, there isn't a right answer. And your role is really to balance the interests of the ratepayers, the individual ratepayers who are affected, and the rest of the ratepayers who are funding it. And so it's really important to understand and be aware going in that your ratepayers are going to have different views, and they're going to call you. Particularly where there's a politically controversial issue, you're going to have people calling you saying, you need to vote for this project because it's really going to help me. And you're going to have other people calling you or posting on Facebook that you're an idiot because you should definitely vote against it. Embrace yourself for that because it happens. Next slide, please. Sorry.
I bought some for everybody.
So lots of council decisions are routine. We pass the same bylaw on an annual basis for lots of reports and ministerial requirements. But others, and really I think the more important ones, establish the principles and the direction that determine the municipality's future actions. So what I mean by that is it's really council's role to be forward-looking and thinking about what are we going to do to make West Nipissing better in 5 years and 10 years and 50 years down the road. And we need to do that. You'll hear in budget meetings talk about reserve funds. And so we're actually taking tax money and we're putting it away so that when we need to buy a new fire truck, we have money set aside. That's what I mean about visionary, because lots of times, lots of decisions that you make at the council table, the effect of them will not be felt during your term of council. That's really important to understand when you're putting together money for a water plant. That's issues that is going to improve the municipality for decades into the future. Okay, let's move on. Well, this relates to this, what I just said, it really relates to this slide. So council's role is to be a steward of the municipality's financial and administrative resources. So that's the money, the taxpayers' money, also all of the infrastructure resources that we have and staff. And what I mean by that is it's really important to grow your staff and to retain, recruit your staff and train them so that they can give you better advice going forward. So your role in monitoring, one of the things I should have said when I was talking about getting the motions right, and let's go back to our posting snowmobiling in the park. Would have been good to have the date that the signs go up, but it also would have been really good to have a report come back from staff in that same resolution after the next winter, after they're posted, to see whether it has in fact reduced the snowmobiling through the park and whether that has avoided the damage that they were trying to do because the sleds were ripping up the grass and had to be fixed. So was that effectively saving the cost and improving the solution? And so evaluating your decision is equally important when you're making a decision around the table. So when a motion is being discussed, it's a really good idea to have a report date to evaluate it, to come back in 6 months or a year so that you can decide whether the posting worked or whether we need to do something different. Maybe we need fences. Maybe we need to hire a security guard. We're trying to remove the damage from the park that the snowmobiles were doing. And so is the posting of it going to achieve that or not? It's just an easy example. Okay, so council monitors the implementation of the decisions by having reports back from staff about the effect of the decision so they can adjust it. One of the things to keep in mind, the decisions of council are the law of the municipality, but they're owned by council. And so if it's not working, even though you made a decision, you can change it and you can update it. And it's important for council to remember that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we talk about staff and there's a lot of people in this building. Statutorily, under the Municipal Act, we have to have a bunch of specific staff people. Sometimes they can be a single person. So you have to have a clerk, you have to have a treasurer. You have to have a chief building official. You have to have, if you have a fire department, you have to have a fire chief, things like that. So there are statutory requirements for various officers. Council also has to act in an ethical manner. And that's why I have this job, because the provincial government has said that every municipality has to have a code of conduct, has to have an integrity commissioner to enforce that code of conduct. And so they're putting in requirements that you have to act as a member of council ethically in accordance with the rules. They have really put rules in place to make sure that members of council, of every council in the province, are acting to these ethical standards. And the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, as an example, has been updated not that long ago to indicate that members are expected to behave in a manner that will sustain the strictest scrutiny. Got the words of that wrong a little bit, but that's pretty much what Section 1.1 of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act says. And what that means is, whether you're in West Nipissing, or whether you're in Matawan, or whether you're in Toronto, members of council are held to the same standards. And so don't assume that you'll get a break because you're in a smaller town in the north. You're expected to follow the same rules. Now, one of the things that I really appreciate as an integrity commissioner is that they also gave me the jurisdiction to give advice to council. So I don't want to scare you away that there's all these ethical rules and you don't know what they are right now and they'll be hard to follow. There are all these ethical rules and you are required to follow them, but you can ask the integrity commissioner, or you could probably ask the CAO, depending on what the rules are, for some advice about how what you should be reviewing and how to follow the ethical requirements. So overall, council is to make decisions that are in the best interest of the municipal corporation. You actually have a fiduciary duty to do that, meaning a legal duty to act in the best interest of the municipal corporation. Next slide. This isn't funny, but it's something that I hear frequently, and I have seen. I have a municipal client where the municipal council came in on a platform of cutting municipal taxes, and they sure did. They got rid of all staff. They staffed the municipality with volunteers. The volunteers were not professionals. The volunteers did what they thought was right. Council was very pleased that they were able to immediately reduce the expenses of the municipality by doing this. However, what then happened is bridges started to need maintenance and they didn't have reserve funds. The volunteers who were acting in the position of treasurer were not properly paying the staff that weren't volunteers. They were paying them by electronic funds transfers without doing proper pay stubs. The long and the short of it is that municipality has had a massive tax increase after municipal affairs came in and said that everything is wrong. And so the reality of municipal taxes is that they probably shouldn't get cut. If you're in a situation where your treasurer is coming to you saying that we have a surplus, they probably have a reserve fund where we should be putting money so that we can put a new roof on the municipal building. Forecasting expenses and saving for and figuring out how we're going to fund the expenses of the municipality is a huge role of both the Treasury Department and council. And you'll hear about those issues at most council meetings. And so your stewardship role, while it may be attractive and it may get you elected that you're going to cut taxes, that's a double-edged sword because of the problems it can create if you're not maintaining the municipal assets or the books and records appropriately. Next slide, please. So I told you about the protection that exists. So you don't always have to be right. And often when you're making a decision, there isn't a right answer. There's two choices and you get to choose which one. It is important that the decisions be made correctly. What I mean by that is we need to put it on an agenda. We're required to make the decisions in an open session of council with a quorum of council, and there has to be voting on the decisions. And those are all important because if we miss those steps, the decision of council can be challenged as being illegal. And what you don't want to do is waste money on lawyers fighting about whether or not the decision was legal. So that's why, again, the clerk's role is so important because she's going to tell you what you need to do to get matters on the agenda. And she's going to help guide the head of council to make sure that you're considering matters that are properly on the council table. Next slide, please. So we've talked about the representative role. We've talked about the policy-making role, and we've talked about stewardship. And so you're elected to make decisions as a level of government, and you're there to decide the issues, not to actually then do the decisions. I think we've covered all that. We can move on. When you're making decisions, it's important to be able to describe to ratepayers why it was the responsible right thing to do, in your opinion. You need to be able to defend the decision, and so you're going to defend the decision based on the staff reports that were provided, and you made a decision that was well reasoned and supported. It has to be transparent, meaning it has to be done at an open council meeting. It has to be on the agenda. The debate has to be in the council chambers, as opposed to being at Tim Hortons. We do have municipalities where members of council get together before a council meeting and talk about things at the coffee shop. And the problem with that is that then the decision and the debate is made. And in fact, the legal council meeting is at Tim Hortons. And that's where municipalities do get in trouble because it's not a decision made at the council table. Having a predictable decision is important because a lot of the staff reports that you're getting as a member of council to make a decision are made public. So the public can read the reports and they know what you're making decisions based on. Predictability is useful as well in economic development because if you're making decisions about development in the municipality, businesses that are going to invest in your community want to know that they can have predictability if they're going to come to your municipality. The reality is, and I act for lots of large corporations who, over time develop mills and maintain mills and close mills. They watch council meetings when they're deciding about investing in the community. And if you're battling at the table and complaining about staff and it looks like chaos, then they're going to go to a municipality where they're not seeing that fight because they just don't need it. There are other municipalities. The reality in Ontario is that we are competing for business development. And so that's why it's so important that we're professional and formal around the table, because that's what investors are going to be looking for. It's important as well that you use these processes that I'm telling you about and that staff will be telling you about, because it makes the meeting go quicker. It's efficient use of time if you go through the agenda. If you're talking about things that are not on the agenda and you're getting into debates, improper debates that are about personal issues, then the meetings just become chaos again, and they just last forever. Being able to do all of the things above shows good leadership and builds a strong and resilient organizational culture. Next slide, please. The only thing I want to talk about there is the consequences when you get the process wrong. And I've talked about it a little bit, but there's statutory requirements and procedural requirements and bylaw requirements about how matters get on the table and how they're considered. You don't follow the rules, then the decision is open for challenge. A lot of the times the decisions that we're making are probably not something that somebody will challenge, but certainly bidding and tendering is something that's litigated a lot. I'm seeing a lot more human rights issues being litigated where a group decides that council's conduct has offended the Human Rights Code and they end up in a human rights tribunal hearing. And so there are consequences for the municipality if you don't get the process right. And again, I'm not expecting you to understand or know all of the technical processes for getting things on the table. That's when if you have questions about elected, you'll have orientation. The first thing you'll read is the procedure bylaw. And then if you have questions, you'll talk to the CAO or the clerk about how to. There's a lot of support from staff in your role as a member of council. Next question. Next slide, please. I think we've covered most of this. I do want to say that councillor's role, councillor's job at the council table is to persuade other members of council to follow their argument or their position. It's also important when you come to the table to be open to be persuaded. What I mean by that is you don't come to the table with a hard line saying, this is how I'm going to vote, and I don't care what anybody has to say. You need to come to the table with an open mind, having read the package, being informed and coming in with an idea of how you're going to vote and your argument is a good thing. But also listening to the rest of the heads around the table is equally important. It is really important that you're not only persuaded by a small group of people. And if you get on council, I really encourage members of council to talk to people in the municipality that they don't usually talk to. Talk to people in the municipality that you don't really like, because your role is to represent all members of the municipality. It's not the role, it is the role of councillors to persuade other councillors. It's not the role of a councillor or a head of council to force other people to decide, other members of council to decide in the way that they want to. And so lots of times you're going to come to council, you're going to have a position, you're going to argue your position, and council's going to go in a different direction. And then the responsibility of every member of council is to support that decision. Next slide, please. I think I've talked about all of that. Next slide. Oh, this is important. I've talked a lot about the open meetings and that council meetings are open to the public. And that's true, except where they're closed. Municipalities are allowed to talk about some matters in what's called closed session. And you're going to get information in a closed session that is often about personnel issues, about contracting issues and negotiations, about information from the provincial or federal government, legal advice, and those are what we call closed or in-camera meetings. When you get information in closed session, that's to be kept completely confidential. So one of the challenges and one of the discomforts when you're on council is that you're going to get information that you have to keep confidential. And you can't tell your spouse about it, and you can't tell anybody about it until council decides that the confidential information can be made public. And that's because we're going to be doing things as a municipality like building infrastructure projects, being involved in litigation when somebody's hurt. You're going to get legal advice. You're going to be dealing with negotiating a collective agreement. And so that information has to remain confidential. And it's required to be confidential both by the procedure bylaw, by often the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, and the Code of Conduct. So while in the open session, it is appropriate for you to go out and talk to ratepayers and get information about how your constituents think you should decide, when you're thinking of or considering issues in closed session, you can't seek public input and you can't discuss the information that you received with members of the public. Next slide, please. So I've talked a little bit about this, but you don't want to you shouldn't run for council just because you want to act as the official opposition. I have had a number of municipalities where council was split, and whatever 3 said, 2 would vote against. And it didn't matter what it was. And that doesn't move the municipality forward. And so it is really important that you don't run for council only because you want to disagree with the mayor. Your role is to be responsible to make decisions in the best interest of the municipality and the ratepayers generally. Next slide, please. So I have a question for anybody who's brave enough to answer, and I'll pick somebody if there's nobody. What is the job of a councillor in a debate? Thank you.
The other councillors of their own position.
Yes, for sure. Persuade. Yep. Persuade, convince. I'm not going to pick on the words. So the answer was to persuade the other councillors of your position. That's true. Anything else?
Rules.
Follow the rules. Yes.
There's lots of.
And there's lots of rules. But don't be scared of it. The staff will help you follow the rules, and the head of council will help you follow the rules. I guess the other thing that I would say in the debate is to be informed of the issues. So you're going to get a council package, and it will come days before the council meeting. So it is important that you read the council package. So you're reading the staff reports. It's fine for you to have your own knowledge about the issue and talk to ratepayers where it's open session and find out what your constituents think about the issue. So it's important to be informed, and it's equally important to have the intellectual intelligence to be open to be persuaded. If somebody else makes a better argument, then it's important for you to be able to say, hey, that's something I hadn't thought of. And that will happen around the council table at most meetings. One of the members of council will say something, you're like, that's interesting. I better think about that. So your job in the debate is definitely to persuade council to follow your position, but to be open, to be persuaded yourself, and overall to make a decision, be part of a decision that's in the best interests of all of the ratepayers of West Nipissing. Okay, next slide, please. So I think we've covered most of this, but it's important that you understand you're being asked to have an opinion to make a decision. And your job as an elected member of council is to participate in making the decision. There will be decisions you wish you didn't have to make. At most meetings, probably. Maybe not most meetings. But frequently, there will be decisions you're part of that you wish you didn't have to, because it's going to impact some people that aren't going to like it. It's important that you consider the information from staff, it's important that you think about and identify the alternatives. And good staff reports are going to do this for you. So they're going to say on agenda item number 2, staff recommends that council does whatever. But the good staff reports are going to say, here's what happens if you do nothing. And here are the other options that we have considered that we've chosen not to recommend. And so it's important as council, when you're looking at a report, try to figure out, are there things that I would do differently that aren't in the report? In which case you can ask for them to be looked at. But you want to make sure that you understand what the alternatives are to the decision. And you always want to know what happens if we don't do anything. It's important to analyze the information, consider how the issue affects the entire municipality. There's going to be lots of situations where there's going to be 4 or 5 or 10 people that come to council that are really upset about an issue. But you got to remember, there's the rest of the municipality that you have to consider. If you solve it for these people, does that create a bigger problem for everybody else? Because it can. So then at the debate, you're deciding if you're for the issue, if you're going to vote for the motion, if you're going to vote against it, but you don't have to. If you need more information, you can actually ask to defer the issue. If there are multiple issues within the motion, you can ask to split the motion. And you need to prepare your persuasive argument or your sales pitch before the council meeting. Okay, next slide. So one of the first things to consider always, and it's probably going to be near the top of any staff report, is does council have the legal authority to make the decision? And so there's lots of things that we don't have the legal authority to make. We can't decide issues that affect our neighboring First Nations. We can't make decisions that deal with federal airports. We can't make decisions that adversely affect navigable waterways. And so if something's coming forward, you want to make sure that you have the authority to make that decision. So then you want to figure out how the decision fits within what I call council's term plan or the municipality's strategic plan. And those are forward-looking documents that really guide the decisions of council. It's important to know, has council considered this decision or a similar decision before? And what happened? And so staff would probably tell you that in the report. You want to know whether council already, and this is often a question for the clerk, has council already adopted a policy or a bylaw that impacts this decision? Lots of times we're changing a decision that council has previously made. And so we may need to rescind or amend a pre-existing bylaw. And then you want to know what's the risks of making the decision. And if there are risks, what is being done to mitigate or manage the risk? Because as I said, one of my favorite mayors said to me that there's often not a right answer, and we're just balancing the issues in the decision. So lots of times we make decisions that there's going to be some sort of risk. And how are we going to deal with it? Maybe we're going to deal with it with insurance. Maybe we're going to deal with it with another way. But it's important that those issues be discussed, at least in the staff reports, if not around the table. Okay, next slide, please. This is a personality issue, and it's not a good thing to run for council because you want to get your way no matter what. There will be issues that are discussed around the council table that you need to be able to say, that's a good idea, even though it wasn't what I wanted to do in the first place. You need to be able to be persuaded when you come to the council table. Your job is to persuade others, but you need to be able to have your ears open and think about what the rest of the members of council are saying, because each person around the table comes with their own unique perspective and experience. And as I'd indicated, statistically, the decisions that we make as a collective are always better than individual decisions. Next slide, please. Debates are important. It's important to understand that debates are expected and encouraged at council, and a debate is not a fight. A debate is talking about your perspective and your position and reasons for it. And so really members of council don't win or lose issues. The debate is there to decide on the best position and decision for the municipality. So this is expressing your opinion and your reasons. It's important that you be respectful because each person around the table has the same rights and responsibilities to be there. It is important to consider the opinions of everybody around the table. It's so important to listen. It's more important to listen than to talk at municipal council. It is important to talk. So the goal is to persuade, but not browbeat, not get your decision no matter what, and definitely to listen to make the intelligent decisions. Next slide, please. So the mayor is the head of council, and their responsibility is to put forward issues to lead council, but it's important that you don't disagree or argue personally with the mayor. You don't offend, disrespect, or insult the mayor or other members of council. So we don't want to hear any personal insults or derogatory comments. Your job is to put forward reasons for your position, not to insult people. It's not a fight. It is important not to speak when it's not your turn to speak. And the reason for that is in part because the meetings are being recorded and put on the internet. The debate is a public lawmaking process, and what members of council say do find their way into court matters. When somebody challenges the decision of council, I regularly have the debate as part of the evidence that we're putting forward. And so it's important to remember when you're around the table that this is being recorded and it may be evidence and it will be made public. And so that's why it's important to speak when it's your turn and not to interrupt others. It's important just for the same reason to present the facts that you have truthfully. Don't exaggerate them. Don't falsify them. Stay focused on the question that's being debated. This is difficult, and it's something that good heads of council can help you with, because oftentimes when you're dealing with emotion, you'll think about a parallel issue, or it'll make you realize something else. You really need to try to keep the debate on point. It's difficult, but it's important not to become emotional in your position and to be open to being persuaded. For all the reasons above, it's important to control your tone of voice because you're an elected official sitting in a seat representing the municipality. And like I say, what you say and the way that you behave might end up in a court someday, and I'll tell you that judges are impressed by the way that people behave around the table, either positively or negatively. And I've had situations where members of council have gotten into a lot of trouble because they just were behaving poorly, and that comes across when the judge watches the video. It's important to avoid quarreling or bickering, not pointing fingers, avoiding personal attacks, and certainly don't discuss physical attributes or limitations. Again, more and more I am seeing members of council and municipalities being respondents in human rights complaints. And so just remember that, especially as a level of government, the Human Rights Code applies. And so don't make fun of people for a physical attribute or limitation. And I'm saying that because I've had it happen. I'm not saying this because it's a good idea. All of these come from experiences, good or bad, that I've lived. Okay, next slide, please. So I think this is clear already, but once the debate has concluded and the decision is being made, you can vote in favor of the motion or against the motion. You can ask to amend the motion. So in the course of the debate, and this happens frequently, an issue is brought up that would make the decision better. And so you can ask to amend the motion before it's voted on. You can ask to defer the motion because in the course of the debate, you find out we need more information. And so you can ask to put it off to a next meeting or subsequent meeting. Also, I've seen, and remember, this is why I told you when you're on council, you own the decisions of council. I've had situations where the bylaw or the policy of the municipality interferes with what council is trying to do. And so council decides they're not going to go ahead with the project. But that's not really the right answer. If they want to go ahead with the project, then change the policy that's preventing you from doing it. You own the policies. And so you can, as an example, suspend portions of the procedure bylaw in order to make a decision. So your procedure bylaw, you have to give 48 hours notice of a particular issue. And maybe I shouldn't suggest that this is a good idea, but you're in an emergency situation, you can suspend that so that you can get help for people who need it. That kind of gets dealt with when you declare an emergency. But it's important to remember that just because you have a policy doesn't mean you have to follow that policy forever. You don't want to breach the policy because it's the law that you or your predecessors have made, but you have the ability to change it. And so keep in mind that you own that, and you can defer the motion to go ahead with a project to change the municipal policy in order to allow you to do it. If you're going to make a decision that is contrary to an existing policy, you should address that in the reasons for the decision. And so I've had this happen so frequently, and I'm not thinking of an example. But if you have a procurement bylaw, as an example, that says that you have to get 3 quotes in order to purchase something, and an issue's come forward where you need to sole source the thing you're trying to buy, you can suspend that portion of the procurement bylaw in order to follow that decision. And it's good to say we're suspending that portion of the procurement bylaw in order to do this, as an example. And you do see that where it's appropriate to single source, or council for whatever reason decides they want a single source of purchase. Next slide, please. We've talked about evaluating, and this is something I find a lot of councils forget to do. They work so hard on making a decision, and then they make the decision, and then they leave it and move on. It is really important to have staff report back in a reasonable time to find out whether the decision was right. If it is, great, you did a good job. If the result is not, then also good, because now you've got an opportunity to change it, to fix it for the ratepayers. Next slide, please. Talked about both of these things, so we'll move on. Oh, this is so frustrating. And it's a stupid example, but it takes up so much time at so many municipal councils because members of council think that they could do something a little bit cheaper. And what happens then is you're focusing on, buying paper clips at a better price notwithstanding that you've set a budget for staff to buy office supplies, and that's then their responsibility to buy the office supplies. And all you care about as a member of council is, are they on budget? Are they below budget? Are they going to exceed budget? And when you get into the weeds like this, then you're not spending the time with the visionary policies and the direction setting for the municipality. Next slide, please. I'm gonna pretend that we're back at the previous slide. I've had staff members not here say to me that it's really easy to get council to make a decision on a big issue, and it's really difficult to get council to make a decision on a small issue. And so all of you, I want you to remember that, to say, I don't want to be involved in the small issues. I'm not going to get into the weeds. I want to focus on our time on the big issues. And so, you know, when you're looking at whether, like, if a staff report comes to you and says, we've made some purchases and it's within budget, it's not a good use of time to say, well, you could have made those purchases cheaper. It's a better use of time to be looking at how are we going to improve other things in the municipality. Okay, so this diagram shows how council and staff are supposed to work. And this is from both an information perspective and from a management perspective and from a decision-making perspective. And so you'll see that city council is at the top, and council decides the policy issues, and they tell their one employee, the CAO, what they want the CAO to do. And then the CAO is responsible to build the team below them to make those decisions happen. It is not appropriate for one of the people at the top to go down to the bottom and tell one of the people at the bottom what they want to be done. Similarly, if you're on council, you need to avoid the problem of somebody down at the bottom coming and telling you about problems 2 levels up from them. If staff are coming to you with problems, you need to refer them to the CAO or to their manager to deal with the problems. Council's role is not to manage the staff. Okay? Let's move on. So, risk management is one of the major roles of municipal council. And they do that by ensuring that there are policies and procedures in place to implement the decisions of council. And they do that by asking for reports, making sure policies are in place. So a municipality has to have, and this one does, a code of conduct. They have to have a staff relations policy. And the council staff relations policy sort of in words says what that diagram shows, so that members of council go to the CAO to talk to members of staff, and staff give information to the CAO, who then gives it out to council. That's in essence what the staff council relations policy says, and the integrity commissioner has had to been in place since March of 2019. The IC has an obligation to investigate complaints of breaches of code of conduct, the staff council relations policy, or the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. And those investigations are both mandatory and ridiculously expensive. And that's why as an integrity commissioner, I find that my most important role is education and advice, because I don't want complaints. I don't want to do investigations, because I really don't think that I think they can be avoided. And I don't think they're a good expenditure of municipal resources, but they're statutorily mandated if there are a lot of complaints. When this first came into effect on March 1st of 2019, the council in Elliott Lake filed 109 complaints to the integrity commissioner, councillors against each other. And then they were surprised and disappointed at how much that cost them. And so we just don't want to see that. And it's important then for members of council to understand their roles and responsibilities under the code of conduct and don't have complaints. And so again, the IC's role and staff's role is to educate and inform council. So then capital asset management plan is a whole different issue. It's not an ethical issue, but that's something now that municipalities have to have. And for better or for worse, it didn't exist decades back. And so part of the problem that municipalities are facing now is that past councils have not set up forward-looking reserve funds and management plans. Now, this is largely in place now, but we are certainly seeing in municipalities throughout the province that there just isn't enough money to replace bridges. As an example, bridges are some of the most expensive infrastructure that we have as municipalities. And so we need to inspect them and maintain them and figure out how we're going to replace them if we need to in the future. Next slide, please. So these slides are going under Section 224 of the Municipal Act. So one of the roles of council is to maintain the financial integrity of the municipality. And so what that really means is considering strategic or long time frame financial issues. We do see municipalities now doing multi-year budgets. I think that you guys do. And it used to be that we would only do a budget year to year. And the problem with that is it didn't show the history or think of the long-term forecast, which is easy when you're in a 4-year term of council. But the reality is we need a municipal office that's going to be standing for decades. And so we need to understand how we're going to fund that on an ongoing basis. The other way that we maintain the financial integrity is that we figure out the financial impact of resolutions that we're considering. Staff understand the interconnectivity of long-term strategies, and that should be in your staff reports that you're getting about how is this thing that staff is recommending that you do going to affect the financial well-being of the municipality on a go-forward basis. If you're worried about how much the paper clips cost and whether we could have got them 10 cents cheaper, then it's hard to spend time looking at a long-term strategy if you're spending time at council focused on very short-term only. And so the way that we do this is with the municipal budget and particularly multi-year budgets and forecasts. Next slide, please. So the budget process, for people who aren't familiar with it, is a projection of future revenues and expenditures. It has to be done at least annually, but like I say, most municipalities or many municipalities are doing multi-years now. Council sets its expectations about the finances of the municipality and then leaves it to staff to implement that. So when council is considering a budget, they're adding or subtracting percentages from the entire budget. Staff does the bulk of the work in the budget process by coming to council with a recommendation of how they can operate the municipality and achieve the budget. And so your council role is considering the longer time frame, even than just your own term of council, particularly with large infrastructure projects. Next slide, please. Next. So I've talked a lot about the graders. And this is important. And I mean, I say it a bit jokingly, but I also say it seriously. If what you want to do is fix potholes, please apply to be staff. We need staff. That's an important role in a municipality. And I don't mean that sarcastically. If you're going to be a member of council, don't drive the grader. And I've had 3 municipalities where the CAO or the clerk treasurer has called me up and said, Counselor so-and-so has just taken off in the grader. What do we do?
Let him go.
I'm serious. We end up phoning the police and getting the police to stop the friggin' grader and get the guy to come back. All of the reason for that is that members of council are not trained, don't have the safety training, even if they drive graders for a living. They don't have the training to drive the municipal grader. They're not insured. That's way outside of their role. And so if what you want to do is drive the grader, or if what you want to do is be the CAO, then apply for that job. Think seriously about whether that's your motivation. Because if it is, being staff is great. Staff are in that role because they want to make the municipality a better place, which is also largely why people run for council. But the roles are different. Next slide, please. So Section 224 of the Municipal Act lays out the statutory responsibilities of council. So you have to represent the public, develop policies, determine which services the municipality provides, ensure that policies are in place to implement the decisions of council, ensure accountability and transparency of the municipality, maintain the financial integrity, carry out the duties of council under this or any other act. The reason that I give you this slide, and I think that this presentation is going to be made available for people if they want to review it, is that this is the statutory role of council. And so you want to make sure that anything you're thinking about around the table fits into one of these points. Because if it doesn't, then you need to be asking staff, why are we considering this? And there may be a reason, particularly under carry out the duties of council under this or any other act. But this is your kind of your primary, your first touch point about why are we doing this at council. Next point. 227 lays out the role of staff. And so staff's role is to implement council's decisions. So council's role is not to implement council's decisions. To undertake research and provide advice, and then to carry out duties under any other act. So that's what I was talking about with the Cemeteries Act and the Fire Prevention and Protection Act. And there's all sorts of things that have roles for staff. But at a high level, this is what staff is supposed to do. Next slide, please. I guess I take some of this for granted, but it's important to remember that council is a governance board. And so around the table, you're looking at governance issues, which is not the same thing as a management board. And historically, some municipalities have operated more as a management board. I spent a lot of time in Johnson Township, and if you wanted the potholes fixed, you would tell the reeve that there was potholes on your road, and he would jump in the grader and go and fix it. That's not the way we do things anymore. Also, while it's really important to have business acumen around the table, council is not a business. And our role is really not to make a profit. It's a level of government designed to provide services to the municipal inhabitants. And councillors are not managers, except of the CAO collectively around the table. Okay, next slide, please. Also not supervisors. I had a member of council get charged with criminal harassment because what he would do is he would get in his car at night and follow the snowplow around with his headlights off, trying to see if the snowplow operator was doing a good job, and then he'd report back to council. That's not appropriate, as the police told him, and not within your role. Council employs the CAO and or clerk, and they're responsible for the municipal operation. I've had members of council come to me and say, well, what do I do if I'm not running the municipality, or we're not running the municipality? That's correct. You're not. Your role is to make governance decisions. Okay, next slide, please. I think we've covered all of that. Next slide. So one of my mayor friends has a saying that is nose in, hands out. So he asks staff, senior staff, about how things are working and asks for reports, but doesn't direct staff. And so his sort of personal motto is nose in, hands out. So he's not to direct staff, so he doesn't go outside of his role. Council's role is definitely to set goals in your budget, your strategic plan. I really like and would encourage you to remember that as soon as council starts, it's good to develop a council term plan. 4 years, as you sit on council for a few times, is not very long. And if you set a council term plan of the things that you want to achieve in that 4 years, it gives you a vision and you can relate to that and staff can relate to that so that when issues come forward, one of the things they analyze is this moving forward our term plan or is it not? Okay, next slide, please. You do see this happen in municipalities that people run for council because they want to catch staff doing something wrong or not doing something. And you'll see if you watch council meetings from other municipalities, members of council holding their questions and pointing out calculation errors or typographical errors on staff reports. What that does is creates a relationship between members of council and staff that is very negative. Staff's role is to give you advice. If you teach staff that what you're going to do is beat them up all the time, they're not going to give you their best advice. They're going to give you what you want to hear. And that becomes very dangerous as a governance decision maker, because if they're telling you what you want to hear instead of their professional advice, you're liable to make decisions that are bad for the municipality. And so if you have a concern about performance of a particular staff person because their reports are regularly full of mistakes, then you go and talk to the CAO about that. Say, hey, look, I'm getting frustrated because there's just regular miscalculations and this is a problem. And that's for then the CAO to manage. But you don't want to be doing that at council because again, it just creates a toxic environment. And the investors that are looking to come to your municipality are going to say, well, these guys are a bunch of clowns and I'm not going to, I see your question. I'm not going to come. What's your question?
If I do notice like an error that's quite a 10 times error.
Yeah.
In my preparation, I would be prepared to vote to defer it and, have the real numbers the next time kind of thing.
Sure. But you get the council package in advance of the council meeting. And so if you're seeing errors on a regular basis, then bring that to the CAO's attention and say, this is something I'm concerned about. Can you help me understand why it's happening, or can we fix it? The CAO is responsible for every staff report. And so if there are errors, then it's his responsibility to make sure that they're not there. And it's fair for you to bring that up. And then if that person is continuing to make mistakes, then he's going to be on the lookout for that. And so is the person's manager. And then they're going to be able to try to figure out, why is this mistake being made and how are we going to solve it? One of the things that's really important for council to do is ensure that there is budget for training and upgrading of staff. Just like when a new counselor comes to the table, they don't really know what it's like to be a new counselor. Same with new staff. They have to learn. Same with old staff, like myself. I mean, we're learning every day, and we do that by being educated and upgraded. And if you berate and embarrass us, then we're not going to be your friend. Right? Next slide, please. So think I've talked about this, but individual councillors don't direct the CAO to do anything. A councillor can come to the CAO and the clerk to put a matter on the agenda, but they don't make decisions and they don't give direction. Now, usually, the CAO and the head of council are in regular contact, like pretty much daily. And so if you happen to be the head of council, then you're going to be talking to the CAO. And one of the conversations is going to be, okay, council made this decision, and here's what the resolution says, and here's what staff are finding out. Do you think that's within the resolution, or do you think that needs to come back to council? And that kind of living relationship and judgment is something that is regularly done. So the head of council will have a different relationship with the CAO than everybody else. But the CAO is your definite touch point for any staffing issues or any questions about a staff report. Because the CAO is responsible to know everything that's going on in the municipality. And that's not to say that the CAO does know everything that's going on in the municipality, but if you go and ask him a question and say, hey, what's going on whatever road, he'll be able to say, let me find out and get back to you. So direction to staff goes through the CAO. Reports are through the CAO and are requested from the various departments. Okay, I think we've covered all of that. Next slide, please. So this is something that sometimes municipalities go offside with. And that is that council speaks by bylaw. Under Section 5 of the Municipal Act, every decision of council is to be by bylaw. Instead, you're going to hear them called a resolution, and a resolution and a bylaw are pretty much the same. And so a resolution for legal purposes has the same effect as a bylaw. But the point is, if there isn't a bylaw or a resolution, then there isn't a decision of council. And I have had, and I can understand the temptation, but I've had situations where council has talked about something. For whatever reason, they didn't actually vote. And so there is no decision for staff to then move forward with. So it's important if you're around the table and you're talking about something to make sure that there is in fact a council decision on the issue that you're talking about. What I mean is, if you're talking about a resolution and you're voting on the resolution, but there has been discussion during the debate about something else that council wants done, it's important to amend the resolution to include that, because if that decision doesn't make it into the resolution, it's not the decision of council. Next slide, please. So staff has expectations of members of council, and they expect you to learn about the municipal operation, which is why you're here. They expect you to read the agenda and the council package. They expect you to be supportive, and what that means is not asking questions, but not criticizing staff. And so for your example, if you had 10 errors from this person, the proper way to deal with that is to go to the CAO outside of the council meeting and say, this is happening a lot and I find it frustrating. What can we do to fix it? Instead of embarrassing the person at council, because there could be a reason why those errors are being made. And there can be lots of reasons for that. Staff expects you to understand that the demands of their job includes various statutory responsibilities and obligations and ethics. Some members of your staff will be independently governed professionals. So your treasurer might be a CPA and have obligations in accordance with their license. Same with planners. They may be a registered professional planner, and so they have obligations under their license. Same with your healthcare team. And so it's important to understand that that with their professional designation may come professional obligations as well. They expect council to be objective and consistent. They want clear direction. And that's just a human thing. The clearer your direction and expectation can be, the better it is for staff because they know what you're expecting and they can give you what you're asking for. I had a clerk treasurer call me up in tears because she got berated in public by her council because they asked her for a report about the landfill. And it was the kind of report that she would do every year. And so they asked her for the report. She got the report from the previous year, updated the numbers, and presented the report. And the council who asked for it went off on her in public, saying that he wanted a whole bunch of other information that's not in there, which was totally unfair. And the reason that we were involved is because of the integrity commissioner complaint that came. But it's so easy to avoid. If you want something different than last year, tell the staff that you want that when you're making the request, and then they'll give it to you. So one of the keys, I think, that the members of council who are here will agree with me is that the most important thing for a member of council is clear communication with staff and with each other. It is really important to respect the professional opinions provided by staff and outside professionals. There's going to be times where you're asking for a report and they get an engineer to give you advice or a lawyer to give you advice or some other professional. That doesn't mean that you have to follow it, but be respectful of it and consider it. And if you're going to do something different than staff or the professionals are recommending, it's really good for you to explain why. Okay, next slide, please. You may have heard of the Collingwood judicial inquiry just done by Justice Morocco, but one of the things that he found that I was struck by is this quote. He says, "Municipal staff are imperative to the functioning of the town. It's staff's role to provide council with objective information and recommendations, to inform council's decision-making and to carry out council's directions in a manner that maintains public confidence in the integrity of council, staff, and the municipality. Staff are subject to a number of pressures and require clear guidelines, boundaries, and resources to respond appropriately." So this is the outcome, or one of the outcomes of his inquiry into the events in Collingwood. And I just found that this statement is something that all members of council need to keep in mind, that clear guidelines, boundaries, meaning the role, responsibilities, and resources. So it's important to understand when you're asking staff for a report, you're actually spending ratepayers' money because you're paying them to come to work. And so you're paying them for their time. And so if you're giving them a task to do with the time that you're paying for, you're spending municipal resources. And that's good, but you need to consider that. So you want to be judicious, I guess, in the requests that you're giving to staff to make sure that you're tasking them with things that are valuable and not wasting their time. Next slide, please. So in addition to communication, the real fundamental foundation here in these organizations, municipalities, is respect for the positions. And I say respect for the positions because inevitably in small municipalities, you might have gone to high school with the treasurer and you may have history with the treasurer. You may really not like that person, but you need to put that aside and realize the treasurer is occupying this statutory position, and their job, and they have to realize the same of you, is to give you their best advice in the position. So it's important just to treat each other the way you want to be treated. And ask the question, how would I like to be treated in this situation? So to go back to, and not to keep harping on your example, but to go back to your example of somebody who's made repeated errors in a report, how would you like to be treated in that situation if that was you? I think you would prefer somebody coming to you respectfully, not in public, trying to figure out why it's being made and give you an opportunity to improve rather than embarrass you in front of council. Because, like I said, if you beat staff up, if you embarrass staff or other counselors, they're going to retreat and they're going to give you less information so that then there's not errors because they know you're going to pick on that. Okay, next slide. I did say this already and I saw some surprised faces. Counselors are not customer service reps. And counselors don't have the ability to solve individual ratepayers' problems. I was in Kirkland Lake, and they have a really interesting, and this is some years ago, so lots of municipalities may have adopted this by now, but they had a really interesting situation where they have a complaint or a feedback process that is linked to their computer system, that is linked to their GIS system, which is the global locating system. And so in one instance, they were able to find out that they were getting complaints from this one person. And so Public Works was getting complaints, and the fire department was getting complaints, and the bus service was getting complaints. And because it was on their GIS, they were able to say, wow, this single residence has caused 40 different complaints. And what they were able to do is actually go and speak to the lady and found out that she was suffering from some mental health issues, and they were able to get her some help, which they wouldn't have been able to do if they didn't have that GIS system, or if counselors were individually saying, oh, well, I'll help Mrs. Smith with her garbage, or I'll deal with the library issue. And so that's one of the reasons that it's important that counselors individually not try to solve the complaints as much as to give the information to the staff that can do it. Similarly, another example out of Kirkland Lake was a lady called a municipal councillor because her garbage wasn't picked up. And so the councillor, wanting to do the best for the ratepayer, went to her house. It took about 20 minutes. Sat down with her, and she wanted to have tea. And so they spent about 45 minutes talking about, my garbage has not been picked up again. And this is a big problem. And so then the municipal councillor went to the guy driving the garbage truck and said, why didn't you pick up this person's garbage? And the person driving the garbage truck was trained well enough to say, let's go talk to the supervisor. All of this ended up taking hours. The point is that if the counselor had said, hey, Mrs. Smith, here's the phone number for the public works supervisor, he could have just diverted the garbage truck back to pick up her garbage, and this problem could have been solved within minutes instead of hours, wasting, but maybe not being as efficient as possible with both the counselor's time and the ratepayer's time and the municipality's time, because they ended up sending a pickup truck to go and pick up the lady's garbage. And so it just was an example that struck me about why counselors don't solve the problems. They refer the problem to the party that can actually can implement the solution. So it's important to know when you're a member of council that what you hear from a ratepayer may not be the whole story, probably won't be the whole story, is almost never the whole story. Variations of that theme. It's important to rely on your own sources as a member of council. What I mean by that is staff and the staff reports and what else is going on, so that you can be better informed than getting information from a sole source. As well, one of the things that I have seen members of council do when there's a difficult decision is try to figure out ways to get out of it by deferring it, asking for more and more reports, saying that they have a conflict when they don't. One of the things you're elected to do is make decisions for the ratepayers, and not all of the decisions are easy or fun. And it is your responsibility to either approve, vote against, or defer a situation if it calls for it. Next slide. We talked about section 448. If you have questions about it, please go back and look at it. The key is the actions that you're doing have to be performed in good faith, which means you're not taking money out in the parking lot in order to vote in a particular way. That's obvious. Also means you're not breaching things like the Human Rights Code or the Occupational Health and Safety Act. And that's where I'm seeing councillors lose the protection of 448 over the last couple of years. And it also has to be in your performance of the duty. So back to my late Reeve friend who would drive the grader. That's not his duty, and he didn't get in trouble for it, but he certainly could have if there was an accident because of the way that he plowed the road. Although there's protection for councillors if they've done things in good faith and performance of their duty, the municipality might still be liable. And that's why the municipality has insurance. And so there may be lawsuits. I don't want you to think that just because this protection exists that municipalities don't get sued. They do. In fact, councillors get sued, as I suggested with my two mayor clients in Elliott Lake. Even though the action says you can't start a proceeding for damages, the only way I can defeat a proceeding for damages is to get started. So they start a lawsuit, and then I bring a motion to dismiss it. This protects the individual, not the municipality, from liability. But the municipality does have good insurance in place and great lawyers. Next slide, please. Oh, and the last one, you don't want to run for council because you want to be a municipal archaeologist. This is a term that one of my friends came up with for councillors who just repeatedly talk about what was done in the past. And, you know, we're not going to do this because it never worked before, or we've always done it this way. Or they just keep going back to, you know, I'm not going to support you because you didn't support me on this other motion. I like the term municipal archaeologist because it's stuck in my head, and it's a great term to self-evaluate what you're doing as a member of council and say, hey, am I being one of these things that Paul said not to be? Okay, next slide, please. Your role as a member of council is really to be forward-thinking and strategic thinking. And so you do that with your strategic plan, with your council term plan, with your budget, thinking about future maintenance and programs and how you're going to make the municipality better for the next generation or the next 7 generations. Also, equally important is community engagement. And, you know, your council has done that by having this meeting as an example. But it's so important. When there's an election, people spend a lot of time going around to other people's houses and finding out what's important to them. But please don't let that end after the election. It's really important that we hear from our ratepayers. It's really important that we have events to get input from ratepayers. And those can be town hall meetings, inviting people to come to make presentations at council. But I've had situations where the council I'm going to tomorrow, their municipality is about 90 kilometers on Highway 17. They have a population of 300. And nobody was coming to their council meeting. And the mayor there now asked around why people don't come to the council meetings. And they have really two demographics of people in the municipality. They have retired seniors. And they didn't come to council meetings that were in the evening because they didn't want to drive on Highway 17 in the dark. And so the mayor said, fine, every other council meeting is going to be at, can't remember, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And the other contingent of people there is young families. And they were finding that they couldn't come to early meetings because they had to come home from work, get the kids in bed. And so the mayor decided or recommended to council, and council decided that they were going to have staggered council meetings. The point is, it's important to have the community engaged in what's going on at council, because the decisions that you make at the table here affect your ratepayers on a daily basis. And so you need them involved. And so being creative about how to have them involved is a really good idea. The same community has a young CIO who's become quite disabled, and in order to get the community involved, they actually had a fundraising dinner for improvements to the municipal office to bring her back to work. But one of the things that they did is they put a bulletin board on the wall and said, what can you do to help her return to work? And they wound up raising about $500,000, population 300. And they had all kinds of really neat offers from people who were tradespeople. You know, some people said, look, I'm a carpenter, I can help do the renovations. There was a lady in a neighboring municipality who said, look, I'm a new architect. I'll give you a deal on the architectural drawings for the renovations that have to be done to the hall. So just some kind of out of the box thinking that really improved community engagement and built community, which is really one of council's main roles. Next slide, please. So on this slide, I want to talk about the Coolin water slide. This is from a friend of mine from Australia. And Coolin was a town in Australia that was declining, and businesses were closing, and moving out, and it was dire straits. And the municipal council was actually meeting to decide what they were going to do about closing down the municipality. And somebody said, you know what we should do? We should ask the kids what they'd like to see in Coolin. And the kids said, well, so the council did it, and they invited the few kids from the municipality to come and present to council about what they thought would be a good idea to save the municipality. And they said, you know what? We want a water slide. And you can imagine municipal councils thinking, we're closing down the town and you want a water slide. But the council had the vision to say, what the hell? And they found a decommissioned water slide on the other side of Australia. And one of the careers in Australia is running these transport truck trains. And so there were a few guys in the municipality that drove these transport truck trains. And they said, look, council, if you get the water slide, we'll get it. So they did. I urge you to look up Coolin on the internet when you've got some more time, because on their website, they show pictures of what it used to look like. And when they were closing it down, it was just this brown dirt town. And then there was this brown dirt town with a blue water slide. And they needed to improve their water infrastructure. And they found that, you know, it was the only water slide anywhere near there in Australia. So all of a sudden, families were coming to Coolin to ride on the water slide. And so then there's a park, and then there's soccer pitches, and then there's businesses. And it's just a remarkable success story out of rural Australia, where the choice was either the town's gone or it's going to thrive. And council was really outside of the box thinking, got this water slide and built a community around it. So I love this real life example of creative thinking by council saving and improving the municipality. So, we're facing really tough economic times with the trade war with our friends to the south. What are we going to do as council for West Nipissing to make West Nipissing thrive? That's council's responsibility, and it's urgent. So council sets the policy and the service levels. Cool, and they decided to get the water slide and figure out how to fund it. And all of that is done at the council table. That's really important to keep in mind. Next slide, please. So the mayor is the chief executive officer of the municipality. They uphold and promote the municipality. They're generally the spokesperson for the municipality. So if there's press inquiries, media inquiries and stuff like that, that really all goes to the mayor. The mayor's responsibility is to promote public involvement in the municipal activities, ask as a representative of the municipality within and outside of the municipality, and foster activities that enhance the economic, social, and environmental well-being of the municipality. The other thing they do is they run the council meetings. They're the head of the meeting. They chair the meeting. They maintain order. They decide how the debate is going to go, and they control the debate at the table. It's a tough job, and there's a lot to it. And good mayors do a great job for their council, and it's not easy to be a good mayor. If you're interested in running for that, George Cuff actually has a really good book called The Mayor, which is an excellent resource for understanding the role and how to be successful in it. Next slide, please. Okay, so generally the mayor can't bind council. That's the important part on that. So the mayor can't sign contracts. Sorry, the mayor can sign contracts if they have direction from council to do that. But on their own, they can't bind council. They don't make decisions. They don't direct staff, even though they are the head of council. Although they do have a very close relationship with the CAO. Next slide, please.
Excuse me,
Yes.
when the law that came out. for
You're
the-
going to ask me about strong mayor powers, really?
Yeah,
Okay, so we do have a strong mayor here.
In theory.
No, not in theory, in law. Even though I would say the bulk of the mayors who have been given strong mayor powers are not exercising them. So strong mayor powers.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
For us individuals, we're not in council right now?
Yes,
What do you mean by strong mayor?
yes.
does
So-
exercise every day.
That's what I didn't want to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So strong mayor powers came in just before this term of council or with this.
No,
Witness
no,
of jury.
originally to the original group
Yeah.
was, I don't know if
Two
it
terms
was,
ago? No, it can't be.
but
No, no,
for us,
different.
it was about 2 years ago, I can tell you, but I think it was March. It was a random Wednesday in March.
Okay,
And that's when they expanded to about almost half of the municipalities in Ontario. So any council that has more than 6 members of council plus the mayor, at the last go round was granted strong mayor powers, and the lawyer will tell you what those powers are, but it's
Yeah.
every municipality that has more than 6 members now has strong mayor powers.
and so strong mayor powers give the mayor more than just the same power as a member of council. Before strong mayor powers, although the mayor was the head of council, they had 1 vote. So they couldn't do anything that any councillor couldn't do. Strong mayor powers, though, came into effect, and they allow the mayor to put forward certain motions and pass them with a 1/3 majority. So they don't even have to have the majority of council to pass motions that fall under the rules and that they want to put forward. Gives them the right to veto decisions of council. If they wish, they have to do it within 48 hours. And then there's a process for council to override those decisions. It's kind of an intricate web. It gives the mayor the right to hire and fire department heads or the CAO. It does not relieve the municipality from the common law and statute law with respect to terminations and stuff. So even though the mayor now has the power to fire the CAO, as an example, without council's approval, the CAO can then sue the municipality for wrongful dismissal. There is talk, and the ANCTO is advocating for removing the personnel decision-making power of strong mayors because it has so much financial risk to the municipality. And so there is a risk for somebody running for mayor because they want to fire the CAO, coming in, firing the CAO, and then the municipality gets stuck with a $250,000 severance package or something. The mayor has the ability to put forward the budget.
Not ability, must. So the legislation now says that the budgets are tabled as a mayor's budget. And myself and other mayors who are pro-democracy, let's say, have found, with the help of our staff, have found ways to table the budget that still was inclusive of council input. So, but the legislation is very specific that the budget is tabled. It is a mayor's budget. There are specific legislated timelines. So once it's tabled, council has 30 days to file amendments. Once the amendments are for the 14 days.
The amendments, and then
Yeah.
council can override
We tabled staff budget. And we had our full discussion like it was any other budget process. And then when I tabled the mayor's budget, it was a budget that had already been agreed to in principle by the rest of council. And then we followed that with a resolution to shorten the legislated timelines of the 30-day amendment period to a 3-day amendment period because the budget that was presented was in accordance with council's wishes.
And the mayor, in a strong mayor situation, has the ability to put forward motions, and I guess these are the 1/3 majority motions under the provincial priorities, which is housing, transportation. What's the third? There's 3: housing, transportation, care, maybe. So
They're kind of vague because really, if you want to do something, you can buy anything under one of their, or at least try to justify. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's not really well identified what that
they are
means.
pretty big and you could be very wide. The reason that the provincial government said they were putting it forward is that they wanted to see housing development increase in speed. So they were giving the mayors the authority to basically influence and expedite housing development. I'm not sure it's happened. In fact, didn't the last report say that we're 60% behind the goals that the provincial government had put forward? Yeah, so those are out there. They're interesting and to be determined what they're going to look like in the next term of council. I think they're going to get amended, but really depends on the provincial government's motivation. And I think it depends on the fallout of exercises of strong mayoral powers. I haven't heard a lot of terrible consequences, but they're coming.
That could also be that some of them would be legal issues.
Oh
So
yeah,
if you look at terminations, so you're never going to hear out of Barrie when they council hired a CAO and the mayor fired the CAO and hired somebody else. If the legal agreement for that termination is negotiated. There'll be non-disclosure agreements with it on, okay, well, they ended up paying, $400,000.
Yeah.
So some of those you won't hear about, especially if there's legal ramifications, because it'll be hidden behind the,
You'll probably
Anyways.
still, you'll probably still get the budget impact though, because
Yeah.
you're,
it would have to show up there somewhere.
the expense
Sunshine list.
eventually show, yeah.
Thank
that's-
you, Angela.
So thanks, Rolly.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
Okay. So why you should run for council after me telling you 10 reasons not to? You should run for council to make a positive contribution for your community. Because you can. And it really is an exciting and challenging role. And the reason that I hear just about every single person that I've ever asked why they ran for council is that they wanted to make the municipality a better place. Something I do when I do staff council training is I'll ask the newest staff person why they ran for council, and they'll come up with I'll ask the newest staff person why they are working for the municipality. And after the money and the fame, they always say that the reason they are staff is because of they want to make their municipality a better place. And council almost inevitably says the same thing. The reason that's important to remember is that as you go through the term of council and things get tough, it's really good to remember we all started this from the same place, and our goals are all to make the municipality a better place. And so where's the disconnect? Because if we're all coming at it if we're all seeking the same goal, why is there a problem here? Next slide, please. We've already done that.
Yeah, we did that.
So that could be a duplicate. No,
You're
we're
going
backwards.
We're gonna do it again. Let's do it again.
I'm going forward. Why is it going backwards? I'm gonna figure it. Normally we can we go forward?
You're at the end.
No.
No, you're going back.
You're going back.
Why?
Backward.
One mouse is now decided.
And now is why you should be a counselor?
Okay, so that's where I want to go. 10 reasons to run for council. So the next.
Oh, there you go.
Here's the top 10. Next slide. Listen and be good at seeking advice. One of the things you'll do on council is you'll always learn. Another reason is to have the garbage picked up and the streets plowed, because that's one of the big responsibilities of council. Not councilors, you're not picking up garbage, but you're making sure that that gets done. Number 7, I think, should be number 1, and that's to build your community. When I mean it, is to bring your ratepayers together and be proud of being from West Nipissing. I think that is one of the most important reasons to run for council. Next slide. So similarly, to facilitate community ideas. So Coolin is a wonderful example, but there's lots of ideas. And so bring them to the table to make West Nipissing thrive. Next thing is to do something important with your time, and it's a fairly decent time investment. Right?
Yes.
To give back to your community, and to perform a public service. Next slide. I think number 2 is one of the things that I hear members of council tell me is their favorite part about being a councillor. That until they ran for council, they didn't know something about their community. And that when you run for council, you learn about your community, its history, and you're part of its future. And number 1 is to run the people's government, because this is truly, I believe, the most important level of government, because like I say, we're in front of people, helping people every single day in real life. We're the people that come to the table to help when there's a problem, when there's an emergency. We're communicating face to face. We're not just phoning it in, and you're not just speaking to a deputy minister. you're able to speak to members of council. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's some of the tough stuff. You need to be prepared for the following when you run for council. So be prepared and able, and be honest with yourself about your ability to do this, to receive feedback. And when I say feedback, some people are going to tell you they're really happy with what council's doing. More people are going to tell you they're really unhappy with something that's going on. And it might even not be a council issue. It's important to understand the concept of the intellect of crowds, meaning that multiple people around the table make a better decision than one person. You need to really buy into that to be on council, because you're going to be living it for the next 4 years if you do. You need to be invested in the idea that the relationship at the table is based on respect for the position, the seat, the elected position. You don't have to like the people, but you have to commit to yourself before the election, because you don't know what council is going to look like after the election, that you're going to work with whoever your team is. You don't get to choose that. You'll need to know and to be ready for important numbers. There's some fun. What's that? The CAO's phone number. Yeah, I mean, every councillor, after the next election, I understand that the latest amendment is that you have to get the CAO's phone number tattooed on the inside of your wrist. Next slide, please. Okay, so councillors are not allowed to answer this, but for the rest of the folks around the room, what's the secret? What do you think the secret is? It's a number. The secret of being a good member of council.
Just a number.
Just a number. Anybody want to guess? No, you can't, Your Worship. You've seen this before.
I was going to say one as a group, one as a whole.
You're almost right. I think your concept is right.
I'm used to dealing with people every day, so I listen and I try to
Yeah,
go in.
your concept is right. For West Nipissing, there is one critical important number for success on council. Next slide, please. I don't know if I've got it right.
Population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell my councils to put the population number up on the wall in the council chambers. And the reason for that is there's going to be 10 people at council that are really loud about an issue. And what you need to do is listen to them, find out what's going on, make some decisions, but always look at that number, because the decision that you make is going to affect that many people. Whether it benefits the 10 or not, it's going to affect that many people, because if you make a decision, whether it's giving direction to staff, whether it's implementing a decision, revoking a decision, you're affecting the money and the lives of those people. So
It's when one person walks into chambers with guns blazing. Like, and how often does that happen? I've seen it quite a few times. And seemed surprisingly that everybody's kept it together.
yeah, so it's important to remember when you're on council, your responsibility is to all of the municipality, not just the people that you like, not just the people in your riding. To the whole municipality, because you're spending all of their money. So I want you to keep that number in mind. I think that's the end of the presentation. Okay, yeah, there's a bunch of other numbers.
Oh, that's backwards again.
I'm having difficulty. The mouse is being,
It's not like
it wants to go home.
What? There's a cat chasing the house.
One more. It's on backwards again.
Last thing.
So I'm happy to answer any questions that you've got now. If you want to ask in front of everybody, if you want to wait for later, Roland, you got another question?
Oh, not a question, more of a comment. You're elected in one ward
Yes.
and about 99% of the decision you're taking is for every ward. So you don't only represent the one ward that you're elected in, you represent the municipality as a whole.
100% of the decisions that you
Yeah.
make affect the entire municipality. And so the ward system, gives you a chunk of people that you're responsible to talk to, and you're responsible to bring that information to council. But your responsibility as a member of council is to make the best decision for the whole municipality. And that is a challenge where you've got wards because it seems like your duty is to your ward. Your duty to the ward is to bring their information forward. Duty to council is to make the best decision for everybody, because every decision you make at council is spending everybody's money and affecting everybody's life. Any other questions or comments? Well, I really appreciate it. Oh, good.
Oh, sorry,
No.
everybody wants to go.
Yeah, yeah,
Ward,
yes.
is how you determine what ward you're in. Is that where you live? And that's
Yes.
where you have to.
Well, sorry.
You don't necessarily.
You say yes, they say no.
No.
Well, the wards are geographic boundaries within the municipality. And that's based on historically.
Whatever ward you want to run in.
Yes.
Oh, you pick?
Yes,
No,
you can.
yeah.
You can.
You pick when you file your nomination papers.
Which ward?
So, but you can run, you can live in one ward and run in an entirely different ward. There's no saying that you can't do that. Whether or not you'd have success that way, is up to the voters to determine, but you're free to run in any ward that you see fit.
It explains it in your information package. It covers that
You
section.
get when you. But
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's online.
A question or just an itch?
No.
can I ask one more? If nobody else is jumping in. Earlier in your presentation, you mentioned something about one of the counselors went over to somebody's house and had tea and
Yeah.
I got to discuss the problem.
Yeah.
Isn't that part of what counselors are supposed to do to a certain degree? I'm
So
not saying spend all day with them, but spend time with your constituents to see what their issues are.
it depends. Yes and no. What that counselor was doing was dealing with a complaint that the lady's garbage didn't get picked up. And so when you get a phone call that my garbage didn't get picked up, what you should do is give the person the public works.
Service request.
Yeah, but what happens if you have to catch them at, you mentioned earlier, Tim Hortons
Yeah.
Donuts and you're having
Yeah.
a coffee and they
Yeah.
just happen to come up to you and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Well, isn't it a good idea to sit down with them and actually listen to them? I mean,
Yes.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're talking about two different things though. It's important to get information from your ratepayers and understand what the issues are that they have and what they would like to see done in the municipality to add service, to change service, to that sort of thing. So yes, definitely talk to ratepayers. I'm not saying don't do that. But if you get a complaint about a problem, the solution is a lot faster if you give it to the staff person who can affect it, right? And so that was the
That
point,
makes more
that was the discrete point that I'm trying to make. Definitely, I want you going out and talking to your residents and finding out what the issues are and, figuring out how to do that. And I would encourage you not to talk to the people that you always talk to. Like if you're in Ward 2, figure out how you can talk to people in Ward 2 that you wouldn't generally talk to. And you can still go, notwithstanding that you're going to go knocking on doors if you're campaigning. You can still go and talk to people in your ward during the term of council. So definitely it's okay to do that. And keep that in mind, because what's going to happen when you're on council is people are going to come to you. But remember that that's not all of the people in the community or the ward. And so seek out information from people that are not coming to you so that you can get a broader understanding of the issues in the municipality. Okay. Understood? Yeah. Did I cover that? Okay.
Yeah. Maybe if I could add also to this, we just had a meeting, public consultation about an issue. The ones that are affected, about the decision that's gonna come down, which way or the other. They showed up, they're opinionated, they say what they need to say. The ones that are, doesn't bother them, or they want to have the other way around, they don't come out and say it. So it's, for me, it's my job to go and knock on the doors of the people, let's say if there's issues around the lake. And it's my job to go and get the other version too. Because now I've got one version of the way that some people want it, but I didn't get the version of the other people. So it's good to get your information so you can balance it to make a better decision at given.
That's a really good point, that people who are coming to you who are opposed to something, they may not be everybody, and so they may be loud and persistent. And it's good for you to hear that information, but figure out, based on the big number, who am I talking to? Am I hearing from 20 people, or am I hearing from 2,000 people?
That's where it's important to have the numbers of 14,000
Yeah,
to remind you, you represent.
that's why I say always come back to that number, to think about, okay, these people are really affected by this, are really interested in this issue. How's it going to affect everybody else? And what's then the right decision for me to advocate at council?
Agreement is often silent and dissent is often loud.
Yes, that's a really good point, and I'm going to start using that in the next presentation.
Do you have written permission for that?
Well, she said it in a public meeting and it's recorded, so yes.
Thank you, Paul. Really appreciate it. Thank you to the members of the public that showed interest on behalf of our mayor and some of our councilors here. Appreciate your participation and of course, final thanks to Madam Clerk and Madam Deputy Clerk for your audiovisual prowess and for putting this together and organizing this session. So thank you very much.
And for anybody who didn't want to come out and be part of this tonight, I will be posting this presentation as well as the slide deck on our website tomorrow.
There you go.
Great. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.